Hey everybody, welcome. I am pleased to be with you today. It's been an interesting start to the year already. I wish I could say I was working hard, but I was on vacation for most of January. uh, but it's good to be back in the saddle, back in the rhythm, back helping people improve their presentation skills so that they can be more effective, command the room, sell more if you're a commission salesperson. If you're in leadership, hey Renee, good morning. If you're in leadership, hey Jeff Crockett. You want to, of course, not waste people's time when you're in front of the room. Greenville, South Carolina says hello. It's lovely there. And this idea of becoming better is not something that's on a lot of people's minds. And here's why. It's because when you're prepping your next presentation, you're usually worried about just getting through it. I mean, we're often waiting till way too late to start preparing it. And we're not looking, I had film class when I was at Wayne State University, and they taught us that film at the time moved 24 frames a second. So most people are looking at the frame that they're in right now. They're not looking down to the end of the movie, right? You're not looking at how to be a better presenter 5 presentations from now. You're just worried about getting through this presentation. And so it becomes a little bit hard to do any kind of long-range planning or purposely become better in the long term if you're always fighting the current fire. And this is a very common problem. I don't think anybody's to blame for this, but I think the more that we talk about it and the more aware you are of it, the faster you can improve, the more you can help others. That's really what presentations are about. They're not, at the end of the day, they're not about making more money. Hey, Sparky, how are you? It's not about making more money, and it's not about short-term things like you being nervous, you being more comfortable. The real goal of a presentation, the real outcome, is you helping others, right? With whatever information that you have for them, or techniques or strategies. I mean, this is even if you're giving like a safety presentation at your company, your goal, the outcome of that safety presentation is nobody getting hurt, right? If your goal is to get a better product into people's hands so they can save time, even though you're a commissioned salesperson, your goal is not to make more money, your goal is to help people save time. And the better you are at the presentation, the more people will be helped, right? The more people will save time. And it can all be quantified. How much time are they saving? That kind of thing. So in order to really, truly understand what it takes to be a better presenter, you have to kind of zoom out. Everybody wants to zoom in these days. Let me take a little closer look at this problem. You know, let me move in on it and focus and spend more time. And I think sometimes the better way to understand a problem is to zoom out, you know, and look at it from a different perspective, perhaps from a distance. So let's try that just for the first few minutes of this conversation today and see if it helps. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Andrew. I've been enjoying our exchanges online. Thank you very much. So this idea, guys, for improving and thinking about the long term comes from a general philosophy that I've had about life that I call the secret of life. Everybody refers to it in different contexts. When I talk about the secret of life, I'm not talking about, you know, some sort of mystical, ethereal thing that you can never actually grasp, right? Like sand that's falling. You ever try to hold sand at the beach? You put it in your hand, and even if you separate your fingers just a little bit, the sand falls through. It's almost impossible to hold sand in your hand. And so I think this my version of the secret of life is actually you're able to hold it in your hand. You're able to understand it. You're able to actually do it because it's so easy to comprehend. To me, the secret of life, everybody, is having something to look forward to. It's that simple, right? Now, you could make it complicated. What do you mean something to look forward to? You mean with my career? You mean like with my health? You mean like with my family? You mean like with a little project that I'm working on? Okay, yes, right? It doesn't matter. If you have something to look forward to, you start to anticipate it. And if you start to anticipate it, you start thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, you're planning. And if you're planning, you're more likely to execute. All of these things start to come into play when you have something to look forward to. So think about it in terms of presentation skills and what you do for a living, or what you do for a hobby, or what you do because you're forced to. A lot of people feel like, presenting is like a hostage situation, and sometimes it is. And so can you think about it as something to look forward to? And then what happens is everything tilts, right? You start to think of it as something that can be improved, right? If I'm looking forward to it, then I'm not being held hostage. It's not a difficult situation. It may be a challenge, but it's not an impossible challenge. I can actually impact it in positive ways because I eagerly anticipate it. It's much different than saying, I have to do this. You see? It's the shift from, I have to do this, to, I want to do this, or even more so, I want to do a good job at this, right? And that's the overall arc in anything as on a scale of improvement, right? And so this idea of not only looking forward to it, but hopefully doing better at it than you otherwise might, because you're eagerly anticipating it and because you're in the mood, you're in the mood to do better. So when we think about the psychology of change and how we would actually present better, not only this time, but next time, the next time after that, we're identifying now the one thing that keeps us from changing. It's our own habits, right? It's how you got to be where you are now that's keeping you from being that much better down the road, right? Now, I will give you this. Almost everybody can improve incrementally, because the process, the change process in the presentation spectrum is an iterative process, right? I'm really good at what I do in terms of speaker coaching, right? And I can be very motivational under the right conditions, right? You're open to it. I'm really on that day, whatever. And I do a ton of motivational speeches, but nobody is good enough to change you just by telling you one thing. Even you're not good enough to change you by telling yourself one thing. You understand how important this is? It's an iterative process. You have to hear that message over and over again, sometimes from the same person, sometimes from different people. When you were kids, your dad told you something over and over and over again, but you never got it, over and over and over again. You never did it. You never changed. But your Uncle Fred told you one time, and you're like, oh, I get it now, right? And it was that iteration. It was your dad telling you a million times, and your Uncle Fred telling you that last time. Uncle Fred came in a different door of your brain than Daddy did. And that's okay. But that's an illustration of the iterative process, the process that allows us to change long-held habits over time because we're processing the message multiple times from multiple sources. This is the key. This is what helps us conquer old habits that are keeping us in place, keeping us from improving as presenters. And so the other day I watched a nice lady give a presentation, and at the end of her presentation, she did a pretty good job. At the end of her presentation, the audience gave her a polite round of applause, and she did something very interesting. She curtsied. It was a professional setting. There was a lot at stake here. It was like kind of like a sales presentation. There was a lot of money at stake. Reputations are at stake. The product's image is at stake. And the presentation, by the way, is being video recorded, as presentations are so often these days. And this very professional, she actually had a string of pearls on, in a business suit. She curtsied. And I was watching and, just observing. And I thought, that's interesting. She curtsied. Why did she just curtsy? And it reminded me of what a young girl might do. I can't curtsy, but, can imagine what she did. She crossed her legs and she kind of flared out this imaginary skirt, and she bowed her head and smiled. You know what a curtsy is, right? And I thought, what an interesting thing for this professional woman to do in a professional setting where so much was at stake. And I don't know if I thought it was inappropriate, but I suppose it crossed my mind. And I'll bet there were people in the room that thought it might have been inappropriate to curtsy. If you can imagine all of the different types of ways she could have acknowledged the applause. Curtsy might not have been in the top 10. It might have not been in the top 100 of responses. And yet that's what she did. And I found myself, because I'm really interested in the psychology of communication, the psychology of why we do the things that we say and do during presentations. And I thought to myself, why did she curtsy? And as luck would have it, there was a little dinner meeting afterward, not dinner, but a meal afterward. And I ended up at the same table as the speaker. And I always open the conversation with compliments, right? I don't get too critical, especially like if they know what I do for a living, it makes them really nervous. I never tell anybody before they start talking that I'm a presentation coach. You can almost see the color drain from their face. So I never tell anybody. And I didn't tell her right away, as we're munching on our food, I didn't say, hey, I'm a presentation coach, tell me about your talk. But I did compliment her on a number of things I thought were well done. And then I said, in between bites and other people at the table and stuff, I said, hey, if you don't mind, I do have a question for you. And she said, yeah, what is it? And I said, I noticed at the end that the audience acknowledged your talk by applauding. And she said, yeah, that was so nice. She said, I was hoping that they would like it. And I said, and then you did something that interesting to acknowledge the presentation. And she kind of looked at me like she didn't really know what I was talking about. And because I was kind of hoping that she would meet me halfway on this, but no such luck. And then she says, what do you mean? And I said, well, you curtsied. And right away she remembered, and she said, oh yeah, I curtsied, yeah. And then she stopped talking, and I said, well, I was just curious, why did you do that? And then the color drained from her face anyway, because she knew I was asking for some sort of probing reason. And she said, but she was kind, and she answered the question. She said, I don't really know why I did it. She said, Andrew, that's fine. You can watch anytime. In fact, for those of you getting on the video late, you can, of course, watch it in the timeline. You just have to scroll down and find it. I don't know that Facebook Live actually saves the videos yet. I hope they eventually get to that. But so far, you're just going to have to scroll down into the timeline. So thanks for logging on, Andrew. So I said, why did you curtsy? And she said, well, I don't really know why I curtsied. And I'm like, I bet you do, but I don't want to seem too probing. And I said, well, you must have learned to curtsy at some point in your life. And she brightened, her face brightened, and she said, well, I did. And I said, well, you were a dancer, or maybe, did you do ballet when you were young? And her mouth, fortunately, she just stopped chewing for a moment. Her mouth dropped open, right? And she said, how did you know? And I'm like, well, I guess a lot of young girls learn to curtsy in ballet. You certainly didn't learn it playing floor hockey, if you played floor hockey, right? Curtsy is like a formal recognition. It's something that they teach in ballet as a form of etiquette, right? And so it was just a lucky guess, but I was right? But here's the bigger point, everybody. Not that I guessed right. The bigger point is how she learned to curtsy and how long she's been doing it, and in what format that she would actually display a curtsy, right? She was going all the way back to ballet, her brainstem, effectively, if you think about psychology and how it works. The curtsy, things that she learned when she was 5 years old, are stored in her brainstem. Yours too, mine too. And in a fight or flight type of a scenario, right, like presentations can often be, we revert back to long-held habits, like stuff we learned when we were 5 years old. And, if you had your choice, if you really did a deep dive on this, you might not resort to stuff that you learned when you were 5 at the end of a presentation you're giving at the age of 45. But sometimes you don't have much choice. If your toolbox for presentations, if your strategies and skill set isn't that deep, that's all you got, baby. All you got is brainstem reactionary type of mechanisms to get you through it. And I think that's what happened for this lady this nice lady, after a pretty good presentation on that day, she resorted to the one thing that has worked for her, she thinks, her entire life. The best thing that she has going, to say thank you and acknowledge an audience's applause, which she first did as a young ballerina at age 5. She curtsies. Now, as a presentation coach, as I talk about today, the one thing that helps you get better, this ability to change yourself, this ability to improve, this ability to recognize the difference between the old you and the new you, is difficult because the new you hasn't even been invented yet. In some cases, it hasn't even been conceptualized. You see, if you're going to thank an audience in a different way, in a way other than a curtsy, you're going to have that new way. And you don't have it yet. She doesn't have it yet. And until she has that new way to acknowledge audience applause in a professional environment, she's going to continue to curtsy like a 5-year-old. And that's why she's going to have a lot of trouble changing. Until she gets a string of iterative messages that says, hey, why are you curtsying? Let's talk about this. What's it look like to other people? What are the options? How easy would it be for you to entertain one of those options? Can you try one of those options so we can establish a fast feedback loop and you can get some quick encouragement that it's not in your best interest to keep curtsying at age 45, 55, 65. And that's the challenge. So, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that stands between you and improving your presentation skills is habit. Your own habits. Your own long-held, lifelong habits. And this is why getting help with it, either through some sort of regime or a coach, or a lot of people say, I want to read a book on speaking. I think that's silly. I think reading a book on speaking is like, listening to the radio to learn how to dance. It just doesn't work, right? So to find that person to help you, or find that iterative string of messages that's going to help you shift your old long-held habits into the new you, is what gets you the opportunity to help other people. It's what gets you the opportunity to improve your current messaging, your current presentation style. And best of all, if you're in the money-making business, which most of us are when we're presenting, it's a chance to get more raises. It's a chance to get more opportunities to speak. It's a chance to get promoted, right? All of that comes from being a better presenter. But again, we're often so immersed in just, getting that next presentation, actually more accurately, getting the PowerPoint slides of that next presentation cooking, that we don't have time to think about being a better presenter. I saw a statistic the other day that 80 to 85% of the time that we spend, that most people spend on their presentations, is not on being a better presenter at all. It's on the font size of your slideshow. It's on the background of your slideshow. It's getting that damn watermark to show up that they insist on at the bottom of your slides. That's where we're spending most of our time. And it's wasted time. I mean, you might have to do it in order to get blessed by the meeting planner, but it's not helping you become a better presenter. It's not helping you help more people. That watermark at the bottom of your slideshow is not helping more people. But when you can improve your closing ratio, in other words, the number of people in your presentation that are emotionally ready, and in some cases intellectually ready, but we go after the emotions first during live presentations, that they're emotionally ready to do exactly what you want them to do at the end of your presentation, to move that needle from a measly 2% to say 12% is huge, or 2% to 22%, or 52%, or 82%, to get 82 out of 100 people to sign up for your event or enlist in your mission is huge. But you never get there, ladies and gentlemen, unless you look at this one thing that you need to change, which is you got to stop doing things the way you're doing them now and be in it for the long haul, right? I think that culture in some cases holds us back. Even your meeting, your boss is working against you on some level because your boss is not giving you enough time in some cases to prepare your presentation. Your boss is insisting that silly things be in your presentation that aren't going to matter. For example, a lot of bosses insist that their proteges, their team members, use PowerPoint to be successful. I'm pretty successful at what I do. Hey, John Carter, good morning. I'm pretty successful at what I do. I haven't used PowerPoint maybe 5 times in the last 10 years. PowerPoint is not the secret of success. The secret of success is you getting out from behind habits that you learned sometimes as far back as when you were 5 years old, as I talked about earlier. And so society sometimes works against us. A boss sometimes works against us. If everybody you know is using PowerPoint, the pressure, peer pressure, right? You thought it was done in junior high. No, you're still getting it. The pressure to use PowerPoint is almost irresistible. Like your default setting is, oh my God, I've got a presentation on Thursday. I got to get a slideshow together. And you're already you've already stepped away from the script that would help you be more successful. Good morning, Matt. How are you? So as we talk about change and how it really works and how we talk about the one thing that's holding us back, it's right here, guys. It's between our ears. It's how we manage ourselves. It's how we think of ourselves. It's our lack of ability to harness the true value of our presentations and how powerful we really are as communicators. And step number 1, as I say, is having that positive angel sit on your shoulder and whisper sweet nothings in your ear, sweet somethings in your ear that help you say, oh my gosh, I've been doing it wrong all this time. Oh my gosh, I don't have to do it this way. Oh my gosh, look how many other people have been successful using this technique or this strategy. It's like this thing in your brain that if you're shopping for a new car, and let's say the brand name of the car is ABC, if you're thinking about buying or leasing an ABC, all of a sudden you start seeing the ABC car everywhere. It's just thinking, it's just psychology, it's predisposition to what you want. And if you want to be more successful, if you want to help more people, if you want to have your speaking opportunities pay off, not only for others, but for yourself in terms of success, success rate in signing people up. If you're a leader of any kind, leaders, they're really good at getting people to follow them. And the leaders that we see that are in front of the room that we find to be so enchanting and so intoxicating and so, we can't take our eyes off of them. They're using all of these, their tricks. These strategies are hiding in plain sight. But these people that you're watching, they found a way to get out from behind their old selves, right? And to some extent, it was like swimming upstream. They're moving against what everybody else does so that they can differentiate themselves from the rest of the pack. My friend Sparky Leonard is my current district governor here in Rotary. He's on the call today. And Sparky's job right now, and he knows this, because his tour of duty starts on July 1st. It is like going into war, kind of. He knows his job is to differentiate himself from all of the other district governors that came before him. He's got to be unique and distinct. His message, his appeal, has to be familiar enough, but it also must be different. Because if it's exactly the same, he's going to get the same results. And it's true for everybody on the call. Matt, Renee, Lisa, Andrew, all of them. And so all of you. And so this idea of swimming upstream a little bit and stepping away from what you normally do, stepping away from what most people normally do, so that you can get outside yourself enough to try something that's going to pay a big dividend to you as a presenter, as a speaker, as a salesperson, as a sales leader, as any kind of a leader. And so one last analogy before we go is this idea of resistance. You're resisting the urge to do things the way you've always done them. resistance is a very powerful way to build strength. Certainly at the gym, resistance is what weight training is all about. And if you're interested in bone strength, right? They say to women, 40-something, 50-something women, one of your biggest problems is that you're losing bone strength, right? And you become susceptible to something called osteoporosis. And so the way to develop bone strength and skeletal strength, same thing for men, is to lift weights, right? A simple weight is the bicep weight, right? And what you're doing is you're creating resistance. If I just do this, there's actually virtually no resistance on my bicep, right? But if I put a weight in my hands like this, then what happens is I'm creating resistance. The weight, by virtue of this new invention called gravity, right, is keeping my arm from coming up as easily as it did. So now what's happening is I'm forcing this muscle. I'm forcing my entire arm, if you want to stay on the bone strengthening concept, to get stronger, right? And then I put it down again, and I do it again, right? And if you think of this as the presentation, right? I don't actually get better during the presentation, just like I'm not actually getting stronger by lifting the weights. I get stronger when I'm at rest. I get stronger in between the repetitions. I get stronger between the resistance. During the resistance, if I'm doing it right, I'm completely focused on form, right? How fast I'm going, the number of reps, right? All that stuff. And it's when I'm resting that the muscle starts to heal, that the bone starts to strengthen. And it's the same thing when you're presenting. When you're presenting, you're just getting it out there. You're distributing the information. You're serving others. And then after you're done presenting, you're like debriefing. You're getting feedback, emails from people after. Congratulations. Wow, you're a better speaker than you used to be. Right? Wow, I was so interested in what you have to say. How can I get more information? Wow, can I sign up for this committee? And it's all because you managed to change one thing. And so I hope this session has been helpful for you. I appreciate you being in the Present Like a Pro group here on Facebook. You can also get more video help on my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Michael Angelo Caruso channel and subscribe there if you'd like to be notified of new videos. Also, if you know somebody who could be a better presenter, I'll bet you met someone this week. You're like sitting in a presentation and you're like, oh, this guy really needs some help. Tag that person down below and say, and you can always use even if it's your boss, you can always use the excuse that we're all getting better. And that's true, isn't it? I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.